U.S. immigration backlog set to double. 20,000 USCIS staff asked to retire or be fired. The U.S. immigration system may face renewed delays as over 20,000 USCIS employees were reportedly urged to retire early or risk termination amid internal restructuring. The development raises fears that backlogs could double again, impacting millions awaiting immigration decisions. If you are interested in this topic, please pay attention and watch the video through to the end to get all the information. Please hit like and subscribe, and don't forget to push the notification bell for an upcoming video. A wave of anxiety is building within the U.S. immigration system after employees of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services received internal communication this week urging them to consider early retirement or face possible layoffs as part of an impending reduction in force, according to Doug Rand, former U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services Senior Advisor. The stark warning has reignited concerns of return to crippling delays in immigration processing that could impact millions from families awaiting reunification to American hospitals relying on foreign-trained doctors. If USCIS sheds employees, backlogs, and processing times will shoot up. The former advisor warned, who took to social media to sound the alarm. Members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats alike, will be inundated with calls from constituents desperate for help with languishing applications, he said. The advisor cited familiar examples: parents waiting to adopt a child from abroad, U.S. citizens trying to bring their spouses home, growers depending on seasonal farm workers, and companies seeking highly skilled foreign workers. Millions of people waiting, the Post emphasized. The situation evokes a troubling precedent from just a few years ago. In 2020, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, USCIS leadership opted to drain the agency's financial reserves. When the pandemic triggered a sharp decline in fee-based revenues, USCIS instituted a hiring freeze. As a result, over 1,000 immigration officers were lost through attrition, leading to a dramatic rise in case backlogs. That's exactly when the backlog started to bulge, more than doubling within a year. The former advisor noted, referencing internal data that showed a steep spike in pending applications during that period. A major turnaround began in 2021, when the agency under a new administration began hiring thousands of officers and support staff, raised fees to ensure financial sustainability, and reformed processing workflows. We did what any administration seriously pursuing government efficiency would do, the advisor said. By 2023, USCIS had reduced its backlog for the first time in over a decade, even while receiving a record number of applications. Processing times, especially for routine cases like green card renewals, fell sharply. Whereas most people waited 8 months or more for a green card renewal in 2020, now at a matter of weeks, they explained. However, that progress may now be in jeopardy. The advisor stressed that return to understaffing would once again clog the immigration pipeline with consequences not just for families and businesses, but also for national security. Backlogs make it harder to ensure national security because cases sit for months or even years before full vetting can occur. They underscored the founding purpose of USCIS, created by Congress to provide essential services. It's right there in the name, they pointed out. Unlike most federal agencies, USCIS is funded not by taxpayers, but through the fees paid by applicants themselves. These customers are millions of U.S. citizens, U.S. companies, and aspiring Americans in waiting who paid a lot of money to get a timely answer. The advisor concluded, the ultimate goal should be eliminating the backlog with fair and timely processing for everyone. As lawmakers brace for a potential flood of calls from frustrated constituents, the fate of USCIS's staffing and the hopes of millions hangs in the balance. USCIS was established by Congress to deliver services just as its name suggests. That's why more than 20,000 committed civil servants take pride in working there. Importantly, USCIS isn't funded by taxpayers, but by the application fees paid by its customers, millions of U.S. citizens, American businesses, and hopeful future Americans who have invested significant money for a timely decision, the Post mentioned. Will U.S. immigration wait be longer now? USCIS employees get retired or get fired, warning amid internal shakeup. U.S. immigration employees working for the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services have allegedly received an internal email encouraging them to retire early or risk being terminated in the upcoming reduction in force move, as per Doug Rand, the former senior advisor for the USCIS's post on LinkedIn. This week, employees of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services received an email encouraging them to retire early or risk being terminated through an upcoming reduction in force, said Rand in his post. This potential layoff is likely to increase U.S. immigration delays, which would impact millions of people who await to meet their families, as well as people who rely on foreign doctors in America. If USCIS sheds employees, backlogs and processing times will shoot up. Members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats alike, will be inundated with calls from constituents desperate for help with languishing applications, parents waiting to adopt a child, a U.S. citizen waiting to bring their husband or wife home as a permanent resident, hospitals in need of doctors, growers in need of farm workers, millions of people waiting, said Rand in his post. What happened in 2020? In 2020, the United States witnessed a loss of thousands of immigration officers who left their jobs, which resulted in a backlog of applications that more than doubled within a year. When the pandemic hit and USCIS saw a sharp decrease in fee revenues, they instituted a hiring freeze. The agency lost over 1,000 immigration officers through attrition, and that's exactly when the backlog started to bulge, more than doubling within a year, the red blob below. According to Rand's post, Rand was part of the leadership team at USCIS, which in 2021 attempted to reverse the immigration backlog trend. The leadership team then hired thousands of new officers and support staff and raised the fees and immigration charges to help meet the staffing needs. Matter of national security? In his post, Doug Rand also highlighted that the ultimate goal for the agency should be cutting out the backlog in immigration to ensure fair and timely processing for everyone entering the United States. This also risks the matter of national security, as when the process is backlog-free, then a proper, timely verification can be done. Otherwise, rushing a vetting process may be harder for security reasons. Let's also keep in mind that backlogs make it harder to ensure national security, because cases sit for months or even years before full vetting can occur, said Rand. Currently, more than 20,000 employees are working at USCIS. However, Rand's post did not specify the number of employees who have received the threat of a potential layoff, as the agency eyes a reduction in workforce. With staff cuts looming, USCIS may struggle to maintain recent gains in processing speed and efficiency. The future of U.S. immigration services and the hopes of families, workers, and businesses now hangs in uncertainty.
U.S. immigration backlogs set to double. 20,000 USCIS staff asked to retire or be fired. A growing sense of alarm is sweeping through the U.S. immigration system following an internal communication received by employees of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, encouraging early retirement or a warning of potential layoffs is a part of an anticipated workforce reduction. Doug Rand, a former senior advisor to USCIS, sounded the alarm publicly, warning that such a move could reignite severe delays in immigration processing. He noted that a reduction in the USCIS staff would likely trigger a surge in backlogs, disrupting family reunification, straining hospitals relied on a foreign trade, physicians, and affecting employers dependent on a seasonal or highly skilled foreign workers. Rand's warning references a familiar precedent from 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic decimated USCIS fee-based revenue. The agency implemented a hiring freeze, losing over 1,000 officers through attrition. This loss of a personnel caused the backlog of immigration cases to more than double within a year. In response, the Biden administration undertook a major recovery effort beginning in 2021, rebuilding staff levels, increasing fees, and a streamlining process. These reforms led to a reduction in processing times and decrease in the backlog by 2023. Despite record numbers of applications, however, the current threat of a layoffs risk reversing that progress. And emphasize that USCIS is not funded by taxpayer dollars but by the fees paid by applicants, millions of US citizens, companies, and aspiring immigrants who have invested substantial amounts for timely decision. Any return to understaffing could delay case processing for months or years, undermining not only individuals' legal and business operations but also national security. Long delays prevent timely background checks and waiting, weakening the system integrity. Then reiterated that the mission of USCIS, delivering essential services to those navigating the immigration process, must be protected. He urged against repeating past mistakes that lead to massive backlogs and systemic inefficiencies. Currently, over 20,000 civil servants are employed at USCIS, though the exact number potentially affected by this reduction in force remain unclear. As lawmakers prepare for a likely surge of a consistent concern, the agency future and the affairs of millions depending on its timely functioning hang in the balance.